Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. I am Ron Luce, GM Ron, as I'm known in these parts of the world, and I am joined by none other than the boss man himself. If I'm the GM, he's the president, Mr. Tony Marchese. Tone, a little early Four Feathers for us this week. We're used to the 9 o'clock Central Time shows lately, but this 4:30 sounds a little fun, coming to everybody live the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and that is American Thanksgiving, of course, in case we have Canadian listeners and listeners from around the world. Tony, how you doing on this Tuesday?
Little hockey happy hour show edition we got going on here today. Ronald, it's good to be back on with you. There's plenty of Blackhawks topics to discuss today, but I'm doing well. It's just about the holidays, so nice little breather here for everybody. But Ronald, how are you doing, my friend?
Tone, I'm doing well. It was nice since our last show when you and I sat here and previewed pretty much the three games that we're going to talk about here today. We were talking about getting to the UC. And it was nice to get out there twice over the course of this past weekend. Unfortunately, 0-2. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but it just felt good to be back at the UC. And we're going to be back at the UC again this coming Friday, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So lots of Blackhawks hockey for the Four Feathers podcast, lots of Blackhawks hockey to discuss, and plenty of topics, as you mentioned, my friend, on this episode. This is Season 7, Episode 10. And it's called Blackhawks Blackout. And for a number of reasons, Blackout Wednesday, for those that are in the Chicagoland area, and you know that tradition, is the day before Thanksgiving. Black Friday, obviously, coming up this week after American Thanksgiving. The black jerseys, which we're going to get into pretty much right from the jump street here, Tom. And Blackout hockey. And I'll explain what I kind of mean by that once we get through our first segment. And that is Blackout, Tone. The Blackhawks officially unveiled the black alternates. We knew they were coming back. We just didn't know when. They made it seem like at the beginning of the season, Tony, I don't know if you recall this, that it wasn't going to happen this year because of the 100th year jerseys and the special home jerseys that they released. But they said, screw it, we're going to do it anyway. And they unveil them pretty much just this past Friday, right before we got, literally as we were waking up, kind of pissed off probably from Thursday's Blackhawks game. They were able to calm the masses a little bit by releasing those jerseys. Before we talk about how beautiful they are, just some news and notes related to the jerseys. They will be worn for 7 games for the remainder of the season. The first 2 coming this weekend. So this is Blackout weekend. So if you haven't seen yet, the Blackhawks are advertising wear black for both Friday's game against the Predators and Sunday's game against the Anaheim Ducks. They will wear the black jerseys for both of those games this coming weekend. In addition to that, we won't see them again until the turn of the new year in 2026, but they will wear them pretty much exclusively on Fridays. It'll be Friday, January 9th against the Capitals, Friday, January 23rd against the Tampa Bay Lightning, Friday, January 30th against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then we won't see them again until March. They'll wear them on a Saturday, March 14th, but that's at Vegas. So that's an interesting one. I wonder if that's just going to be a black versus gold game. That'll be kind of cool to see. And then Friday, March 20th will be the final time they're worn this season against the Colorado Avalanche. Ben Pope, I think, is the only person that I've seen note it. They have committed to at least 3 years of this being the alternate jersey. So we will see these in 2026-27. We will see these in 2027-28. How much? Who knows? But we will see them again. And sales were through the roof, Town. CBH shop set records in literally an hour. The jerseys sold out completely. They went flying off the shelves on Friday morning. And, at the end of the day, Tony, they gave the people what they want. And it resulted in big-time sales for the Blackhawks in terms of jerseys because I don't know about you. I saw quite a few black jerseys on Sunday at that Colorado Avalanche game.
I did as well. And it's funny that when you give the people what they want, they'll respond by paying dollars for the product that you're giving them. Interesting concept. I don't know why this wasn't done a long time ago. Maybe they were waiting for the 100th year. You brought up a lot of things, and there's a lot to unpack with the black jerseys because there was somewhat of an organizational hesitance to confirm that these things were coming back. This was probably the worst launch that you could have in terms of things leaking out there some stuff wound up online early. You had, rumors about this. You had an interview with CHGO and Jamie Faulkner talking about how they're coming back, just not now. So there was like a lot of buildup for this that I felt like you didn't really need. You could have put these things on sale at any point in time and they would have sold. I love them. I know our guy, enforcer here at the show, Pat Comiskey, has had some terrible takes online about how he thinks that they're not that great. I think they look awesome, Ron. I didn't buy one yet. They were out of my size by the time I woke up in the morning. And you know what time I wake up in the morning, Ron. It's super bright and early. And they were already gone. I think you got your hands on some, but I did see a lot. There's still some available in the stores. Fanatics, CBH shop. It's slim pickings right now. So if you weren't quick draw on the on putting your credit card number in at CBH shop, you're probably not likely to get an authentic or even a mid-tier level jersey through the holiday season is my guess. So good luck to you if you're hunting for one of these things. But because they're committed to them for 3 years, I do believe there will be restocks of these, Ron. I don't think that this was the only time they were going to sell these, especially with the success that they saw within the first, I guess, release of them. But no, I think this was a good, positive thing. I don't know why it was so secretive, but yet not so secretive. I think you probably could have done this unless it was a supply chain thing a little bit sooner this season. I know they wanted to wait until the Madhouse era, but we can talk about whether or not it really lines up with the Madhouse era or if it's a little bit kicked down the road, because even the Cup teams early on, some of those players were in the black alternate jersey. So this wasn't just a one era of Blackhawk hockey jersey here. So, I'm excited to get one eventually. Again, was not quick enough with the credit card, Ronald. But hey, there's plenty of options too. I do have one bone to pick.
Oh,
I do have one bone to pick, and this isn't a ruffle some feathers.
just a bone to pick.
Just a bone to pick. So I went on to the CBH shop, and there's an option to select legends or former alumni in the black jersey. There was one name on CBH shop that was missing when I looked, and I don't know if it's been corrected since, but there was one name that was missing, and I feel like he's one of the most iconic players, not the most, but one of the most in the black jersey, and that was Tony Amonte. How do you not have Tony Amonte available on the CBH shop? Sure, you can customize your own, but they had a large list of Blackhawks alumni. I was surprised that Amonte wasn't there. Maybe it just didn't, the drop down didn't scroll all the way up where it was. I don't know, but Tony Amonte's name wasn't there when I looked. That's one that I want. But Ron, how do you forget Tony Amonte?
I don't know. And I'll be honest with you here. So I am currently scrolling that list for what's deemed part of the alumni. They are only available right now, at least on CBH shop. I think Fanatics, they might have a little bit more supply right now. But for CBH shop, they're pretty much just youth jerseys is all they have left, Tone. But as I look at this list right now, names that I notice and are on here include Adrian Coyne, Edit Belfour, of course. You've got, oh my goodness, there's so many names. Keith Brown, Rob Brown, Adam Burrish, Brian Campbell, of course, Chris Chelios. You can get that one. And it pretty much just automatically comes with the C, which is pretty cool. Corey Crawford is a part of this as well. Eric Daze is out there, which was one of the names that was mentioned in the release as a part of the jerseys, of course.
Tony Amonte's name was listed in the release. It was the first name listed in the release.
It was. And he is not there. Yeah, and he is not there. And that's exactly where I was going with it, Tone. It's kind of surprising that Tony Amonte, who's probably one of the names most synonymous with the black jerseys, probably outside of, I would say, Chris Chelios, really, and probably Eric Daze, given the era that those debuted, it feels a little criminal that Tony Amonte's not there. Now, Tony, I will beg the question though, because I'm sure they had to get approval to have the alumni names. Do you think Tony Amonte told the Blackhawks to go stick it where the sun doesn't shine?
No, because he was there. He was there with God, I forget what he was there for. I'm not sure if he was there opening night, but I know he was there at least last season or maybe the season before for one of the alumni events.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave, he had a speaking part in it. So I don't think that Tony Amonte told him to go shove it where the sun don't shine. It just feels criminal that this wasn't done. We need to get to the bottom of this. I don't know if we ever will, but this might bag an email to the Chicago Blackhawks and say, why is Tony Amonte not available?
I think that's a fair question to ask because, at least for me personally, when I think of the black jerseys, the first names I think of are Eric Daze, Tony Amonte. Forgive me, somebody's mowing the grass when it's pitch black outside. And Chris
Chelios.
Yeah, those are the names that, like, the first three that come to my brain. Now, being that I am a little bit of I wasn't as involved with the Blackhawks throughout that whole era of when the black jerseys debuted in the late 90s. I also have some synonymous thoughts with the early days of those cup teams when they still wore the black before the
Patrick Sharp.
Before the Winter Classic jersey kind of bumped him out. Sharpie's one of them. Nick Hjalmarsson's another. Christopher Stieg when he still wore 32. And then Brent Seabrook, I think we all remember. And you saw it as a part of the montage in the release of Seabrook scoring a big goal in that one, which I thought was incredible. So
early predictions, Ron. I want to get to some early predictions. Which Blackhawk is going to be the first to score a goal in the re-release of the black jerseys?
Well, we know it's going to be Friday, so we know they're playing the Nashville Predators. I'll tell you right now, somebody on this Blackhawks team needs to become a Predator killer, right? I think we're going to see it with some of the other teams. Bedard is kind of, still finding his groove on who he's going to be a true killer of. Frank Nazar, I think, is going to be a Montreal Canadiens killer for the rest of his career, which I can't wait to see. I'm kind of feeling something off the board here, Tone. I'm feeling deep down in my gut, and I'm probably going to be wrong, but I'm going to take my shot anyway. I think Louis Crevier might be the first guy to score with black jerseys.
Ooh, that is off the board.
He has been severely underappreciated amongst players in the league for defensemen for points to their time on ice. Louis Crevier I believe it's the top 3 in the NHL right now. Again, his minutes fluctuate because of how they play the 11-7 format with 7 defensemen. Some nights he's playing closer to 18 minutes. Some nights he's playing in more that 14 to 15 range. But when he is on the ice, he's firing pucks at the net. Because of his hard shot, I think he has the 3rd hardest shot in the NHL this year as well so far. He's creating rebounds. He's getting assists. They're cleaning things up. Just something tells me that he's just going to clap one from the blue line pretty early on, especially if he and Alex Vlasic get the start, which has happened habitually recently. I think Big Louis Crevier might be the first one. What do you say, Tony?
I was going to go with Ryan Donato.
Ooh, I like that pick a lot.
I'm gonna go with Ryan Donato. I just feel like he's got the energy of a black alternate jersey. Like someone who's gonna show up in the black alternate and make a name for himself.
Can I double down on that a little bit here, Tony, for a second? Not necessarily Ryan Donato, but who screams to me that they're going to become part of that, like Eric Daze, Tony Amonte lore?
I have a feeling I know who you're going with.
Tyler Bertuzzi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The long
100%.
hair, the no teeth. Like that, he just screams black jersey to me as well. Yep. And I wouldn't, based on how he's played, I would not be shocked if Tyler Bertuzzi is one of the first ones, if not the first one, to put one in the back of the net as well and create
that was my 1A. There was Tyler Bertuzzi because he's had a good season so far.
He has had a great season. And funny enough, if you go to the Madhouse store at the United Center, so the Blackhawks store at the United Center, they have a very select number of players like jerseys, right? Just the T-shirts with the names on the back. You can find a Nick Foligno. I believe those only come in red. They have Connor Bedard in red. They have Teuvo Teravainen in red. And then they have 2 players in black, and it's Connor Murphy and Tyler Bertuzzi. So kind of interesting that he's already had a black t-shirt out there. And then now that the jerseys are back, he just fits the bill, Tom. He really does. Kind of a TW type guy. What about
I would.
Sam Lafferty?
Sam Lafferty is another one that's out there. TW, the original TW guy from the Four Feathers show. That graphic's still out there somewhere. But yeah. Tyler Bertuzzi's here for another two seasons after this. You have to wonder, like, is he the type of guy that takes a lower number to stick around here after that? You know what I mean? He's really enjoyed, I think, playing under Jeff Blashill so far. Mm-hmm. You've seen him become a top 6 guy, even more so this season than last season. I like Tyler Bertuzzi. I'm just curious, Ron, are you going to place any wagers on your first pick, Louis Crevier, or Tyler Bertuzzi on Friday for, first goal scorer? I guess we would have to put it out there.
I'm gonna have to figure that one out. Stuart, our good friend from across the pond here, loves the Bertuzzi pick. Notably, too, Tony, you mentioned.
I'm surprised Stuart's awake right now.
I am too. You mentioned Tyler Bertuzzi enjoying playing for Jeff Blashill. I think a lot of people forget they crossed paths in Detroit, first with the Grand Rapids Griffins, where Blashill got his start in that organization when Bertuzzi was still kind of a prospect and coming up through the pipeline. And then, of course, they had a little bit of overlap in their time with Detroit before Blashill was let go. And ultimately, Bertuzzi was let go and then started his collection of original 6 Infinity Stones. I know people joke about Patrick Kane having half the original 6 teams played for already. Tyler Bertuzzi's got 4 of the 6 already. And all he needs to do is venture to New York City and then venture to Montreal, and he's got all 6 before his playing days are done. But to your point, Tom, maybe that changes, and maybe he just sticks with the Blackhawks for the rest of his career after that next contract is over. Tony, I will note really quick here, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. I was able to get my hands on one of the black jerseys. I'm very excited. I had a black jersey already. I have a Patrick Kane black jersey from the first iteration of those jerseys. Love it. Wear it fairly often, and it will be worn this Friday to the United Center. But I was able to get my hands on a Spencer Knight black jersey, and I'm very excited about that.
That seems to be the hot ticket name on the back of these things so far. Everybody I've talked to, it's either Bedard or Spencer Knight. And I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. Don't think you can go wrong with either one of them.
I don't think so.
Those are probably the top 2 selling jerseys, I would venture to guess, for the Hawks this season. Have you picked up a Centennial jersey yet, Ronald?
I have not picked up a Centennial yet, Tony. I think I've made the executive decision that I will not get a player on my Centennial jersey and just get a blank jersey. I think that's going to be the move for that one. I made that conscious decision, I think, on Sunday. Quickly here from our friend Stuart. He says it's 11 p.m. Still early days for him. So, yeah, there you go. Or I think it may be 11 a.m. I don't know. I'm not good.
No, it's 11 p.m. I checked it as soon as I made the comment. I wanted to check and see, so I pulled open another tab. And
it's
Google search time in Ireland.
It's still respectable right now from a timing perspective, indeed. And then Jenna told here, devious beard on the right. Well, thank you. Actually, it needs to be cleaned up. It's kind of scraggly and gross right now, but neither here nor there. Tony, let's keep this thing pushing forward, shall we? We got to talk about Blackhawks hockey. Obviously, the black jerseys are all the rage. That's the excitement, I would say, right now around this Blackhawks team. These last 3 hockey games have not been all that exciting for a variety of reasons.
Well, that's what we get for coming on here on our last show.
Of course.
And saying that there was nothing to complain about. Now there's stuff to complain about, Ron. I can't wait. It feels better now that we've got some things to complain about. I felt like we were living in fantasy land. So, Ron, break it down. Let's start talking about things that went wrong.
Yeah, let's start complaining. I think we could honestly take this game by game. I really do. I think there's plenty to be said and just structure it in that sense of game by game. So let's start with that Thursday game, Tony. We were both in attendance for said game. 2 really strong periods from the Blackhawks. I heard a few other people around the arena say, I believe we said it to one another, that second period that they played was probably the best second period the teams had all season against Seattle. They get both goals in that period. One comes from Tyler Bertuzzi on just kind of a little flare tip over the goaltender. And then, of course, a sick pass from Bertuzzi to set up Teuvo Teravainen for a goal as well. Hawks are flying high. It's a 2-0 lead after 2 periods. But you noticed a few things. Obviously, we're going to get to the real drama toward the end of the game. But I think the first thing I noticed when they came out for that third period was just a lack of energy. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to the Andre Burakovsky injury. He takes a dirty hit in real time. It looked clean. You had to watch it on the replay to see how dirty it was and actually see that the contact to the head. But he comes off the ice. He leaves the game in the first period. They don't have him for that entire second period with the long change. Now you're playing 10 forward, 7D. I think you saw it in the forwards when they came out for the third period that they were a little gassed because Seattle was able to put their foot on said gas, get 3 of their own, 2 coming in, normal fashion. They battle back and get some scoring opportunities. But the third goal was the one that rubbed everybody the wrong way. Connor Bedard very clearly slashed on the hands on a semi-breakaway in late in the game, which could have put the Blackhawks back in front, could have given them a chance, and no penalties called. Bedard gives a little bit to the official, and then he calls him for an unsportsmanlike. Bedard goes to the box, the Kraken score on that ensuing power play. And Tony, I'll tell you what, you mentioned that we have nothing to bitch about, or that we didn't have anything to bitch about in the last show. Now we do. I do want to appreciate something of this negativity really quick. How loud have you heard the United Center in terms of passion like that when the officials screwed that call and then called Bedard? I was convinced that guy wasn't going to leave the parking lot safely at the end of the night because the UC was pissed when it was all said and done. Tony, we went back and forth about this literally right after the game. We were contemplating a late night just vent session here on the Four Feathers podcast after that one. Lay out your thoughts for us here of just what was going through your head late in that game.
I'm still mad about it. The Hawks, I think, played a really good game up until that third period, and it looked like it was going to be everybody leaving the UC fairly happy and a Hawks winner, and the train continues to move. I was sort of astounded at the fact that there was no call on Bedard, and then looking at it now, it hasn't been a full week yet, but it feels like it's in the rear view mirror almost at this point. So some of the passion and anger has somewhat left. I'm still very mad about it, but the unsportsmanlike Colin Bedard, I get the fact that, you're not supposed to go over the ref, and, some people have said, oh, he made a little bit of contact with him, all this nonsense. He was skating and the ref was right there. And he went over to him and he said some stuff. What really sort of made it even more just sort of a slap in the face is the fact that Jeff Blashill was visibly pissed at the ref, calls him over to the bench, and when he leaves, I'm not a lip reader by any stretch of the imagination, Ron, but there were some things said by Jeff Blashill in the direction of the ref too that could have probably resulted in another, probably more warranted unsportsmanlike conduct penalty coming from the bench. So, things happen in a hockey game. I put out a statement sort of from the Four Feathers account that, after the game, Connor Bedard said, he shouldn't have put his team in this position, all these other, pleasantries and things that you have to say. Felt like scripted PR to me. I was fine with Connor Bedard being angry and passionate at the fact that he just got screwed out of a call. This comes on the heels, and I think this is important to mention, this comes on the heels of Connor Bedard wearing an A because Nick Foligno's out, right, Ron? We talked about this on our last show. And Bedard had made a comment the day before, or the game before, that, that was like the first time that he felt like he had some respect from the refs so far, and that he wasn't kicked out of any faceoffs. And then it was like, boom, no, snap back to reality here. You're getting screwed by no calls again. And this was the second, I guess, arguable no call. And you also have to go back and think about how some of this officiating has been against the Blackhawks so far this season. I don't want to sit here and make this and put all of the blame on the refs, but there's a lot of adversity that's been created for this team that you just don't generally see for other hockey teams, especially our opponents so far this season, that has changed the outcome of some games. This one's definitely going back into the games they'll want back tracker, Ron. This was at least a game that you should have left the United Center with at least 1 point. and they did not. So I was mad about this one. I'm still mad about it. I guess I'm not as enraged as I was, but I think we were on the phone for a considerable amount of time on the ride back down 55, heading back to the South Burbs, talking over this thing. It was not a pleasant experience leaving the United Center that day. And you've got to find a way to win these games. And it things like this, the no call, the call on Bedard, everything's stacking up there in a short order is enough to flip a game. There are some accounts that are out there that are blaming Blashill for the Hawks coming out dead in the third period. I think that's a little egregious in my opinion. You mentioned the reasons why when you're already setting your lineup down a forward and you have to go down to down to 10. So there was reasons they lost this game. Definitely. I think a big reason is the fact that Bedard goes to the box there. Two wrongs don't make a right. In fact, they make an even more wrong. So it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I was happy with the passion that they showed. Not so much happy with the result. I would have liked to see them battle through that and find a way to go get a win. But you were correct. The United Center was overwhelmingly loud and angry. And I think rightfully so.
Yeah, and double down in a shorter wind here to what you said. They come out dead in the third because of an injury, because of another no call in the game. Burakovsky doesn't get called for a penalty. He goes off the ice. They're without him for the whole second period. You have the long change with just 10 forwards. They came out gassed, and you saw it. It was very visible in the forwards. Maybe not so much the defense, but definitely in the forwards. And it led to good opportunities for the Kraken. There's a reason they were able to get those first two goals. And then it's later in the game when you finally are able to break through. I mean, I will say this. In this stretch that we're continuing to talk about here, Connor Bedard has still continued to play well, despite maybe the score sheet not showing it. He has an opportunity to win the game, and there's another no call. And there were some soft calls against the Blackhawks, too, that gave Seattle some momentum in that game as well. And I think that's where the word I come up with here through this whole thing with the officials is soft. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. So I'm going to save some of that feather ruffling for that segment a little bit here in the show as we continue to push forward. But again, just you put it best. An unpleasant experience leaving the United Center, I think, amongst the fans that evening. And then they doubled down and did not look good in Buffalo on Friday night. The second half of a back-to-back, a late flight after just a deflating loss to the Kraken. You have to go into Buffalo's building where they've been okay this year. I mean, you look at their home and road splits, it's a night and day difference. The Buffalo Sabres play much better in Buffalo, New York than they do on the road. And it showed 9-3 drumming. Yet a couple of respectable individual offensive performances. Bertuzzi scores 2 goals. Bedard and Renzel each pick up a pair of assists, but kind of day late, dollar short. Arvid Soderblom gets the cheese meme back out from the Four Feathers podcast after this one.
Oh boy, I got some things to say about that.
I'm sure you do. And that is all yours, my friend. But just at the end of the day here, not a great way to follow up an already demoralizing game with another demoralizing game the next night when you could have completely wiped the slate clean with a victory in Buffalo.
You could have. This was an easy win for the Hawks going into this. The way that the Blackhawks have played all season, you look at this one on the schedule and you think easy win. Obviously, that's not how it wound up. They came out flat, completely flat. And you have to wonder how much of that loss the night before, the loss of Burakovsky, the trip on a back-to-back, and, potentially playing down to your opponent has to factor into a loss like this because a lot of things were just stacking up sort of against the Blackhawks as we continued down this path. For it not to be such an easy win, and you could throw some stuff out there that the team wasn't prepared in the right way. All this, the cliches that you want to throw out there. At the end of the day, every team's going to have some stinkers. This was one of them by far. I think it was the worst Blackhawks hockey I have watched since last season. probably midway or earlier on last season. It was ugly in every single facet of the game. The defense was horrific. The offense could not really generate much of an attack. I mean, they still were able to find the back of the net a couple times, but the answers came quick whenever the Blackhawks were able to mount any sort of offensive pressure. It felt like the puck was, behind Arvid Soderblom again within another 2 to 3 minutes, and it wipes away any momentum that you're trying to build. You have to find ways to chip away and get back in these games. And, that between the defense and the goaltending, the Blackhawks were unable to muster anything in this one, Ron. It was kind of fucking embarrassing, if you ask me. And we haven't had to say that on this show in a while. Again, night and day difference. That's how fast these things can change from last week to this week. It was bad. It was bad all around. Now, Arvid Soderblom does earn himself back the cheese meme. And people were big notice. People were big mad. They were mad online. They were mad online at Four Feathers. There were some people who agreed, but I did see a lot of mad online at the Four Feathers account. And I think the people who were mad online, Ron, a lot of them, I just have to come out and say this, they don't know the history of the meme. They don't understand the history of the meme. I saw it called AI slop. I know that's a new popular term with the kids these days on the interwebs. We were doing AI slop here before anybody else was doing AI slop. So guess what? This was the original AI slop, Arvid Soderblom meme. And this comes with history. Arvid Soderblom was one of the worst goaltenders in the National Hockey League. 2 years ago, Ron?
Yeah.
Last season, we gave him on this show, and we've got the records, we've got the receipts. We gave him a ton of praise. Mm-hmm. So if you follow along with the show, you know why he earned the cheese meme.
Indeed. Well said. Well said, Tony. Yeah, he earned the cheese meme. And again, I think you put it perfectly. This game was in reach after one period. Yes, you didn't play your best hockey, but you're able to get one late in that period. You make it a 3-1 game. That's where something's got to happen in that locker room. And I'll tell you what, they missed players like Nick Foligno and Andre Burakovsky in their lineup for that type of game. Because those are the type of guys that have been around the league long enough. They've played with great players. Obviously, Foligno's your captain. And they're going to know how to help respond to that. I know a lot of people, again, I've got the receipts, Tony, of the Andre Burakovsky hate from over the summer. But that move has paid dividends. You've seen it. When he's on the ice, this offense looks significantly better. And again, I know we're talking a lot about him. We're going to focus in on a little bit of news around this guy a little bit later. They missed those guys in this game. And that's why ultimately I think this game gets away from them. Your 3-run after 1, 9-3 after 3 isn't great. Shit happens. But Tony, I will say this. I think they did a pretty good job turning it around against the best team in the NHL on Sunday in the Colorado Avalanche. That was a pretty spectacular, just 1-for-1. And I've got something teed up for you here. This is coming from a good friend of the program. We haven't had him on, unfortunately, yet as a guest, but certainly a good friend of the program, Mr. Charlie Remiliotis here. This is yesterday on the interwebs. And I quote, Connor Bedard was on the ice for 12:40 of Nathan MacKinnon's 20 minutes and 36 seconds of even strength ice time on Sunday, per Natural Stat Trick. When MacKinnon was on the ice against Bedard, shot attempts favored Chicago 18-15. Shots on goal favored Chicago 8-4. Scoring chances favored the Hawks 10-6. And high danger chances favored the Hawks 4-0. However, when MacKinnon was on the ice without Bedard, Colorado favored in shot attempts 13-7. Shots on goal were in favor of the Avs as well, 5-2. Scoring chances were even at 5-5. High danger chances were even at 3-3. But that just goes to show, in addition to that, of that 20-36 where MacKinnon was on the ice at 5-on-5, Makar was on the ice with him for 16.5 of that. So Bedard's line held it down defensively, and I completely agree. This game was spectacular. Everybody wants to poo-poo Connor Bedard. He can't play center. He's not going to play defense long-term, blah, blah, blah. He's a different player this year on the defensive end, and you're seeing it. I think that speed helps him a lot, too, keep up with some of these elite players, especially at the center position like a Nathan MacKinnon. They did a great job. I was a little disappointed, though, Tony, And I'm gonna fully save it for our Ruffles and Feathers segment. It's my 1A because we have a collective Ruffles and Feathers that we're gonna touch on a little bit later as well. But I got a 1A for tonight. But I will say this. It was a good test against the mighty Avs. They went toe to toe with them, and to only give up one goal on a fluky play that maybe Spencer Knight in hindsight probably tells you he shouldn't have tried to make. And that's the only reason the Avs were able to capitalize, because otherwise the Blackhawks did an admirable job, arguably shutting down the best team in the NHL.
I agree. They came out in the first period of that game, and it was a night and day difference from their effort in Buffalo on Friday. I was astounded when we got to the intermission, and I believe the Hawks were up. It was like 11 or 12 shots to 2. That's a really good effort from a young Blackhawks team against an Avalanche team that's only lost one game so far this season in regulation. Outstanding effort. Second period, not so great. It felt like there was maybe a little bit of ice tilt. Might need to go get a level out there and look at the United Center ice because Colorado comes back, but Spencer Knight was standing on his head for when he needed to, and obviously they get the one by, but Ron, that's what you want to see. The Hawks played a nice, tight, close game against the best team in the league. And in the first period, there were at least 4 or 5 shots that could have found the back of the net had it not, missed wide or Colorado get in front of a shot here or there. And the chances were there, is what I'm trying to say, for the Hawks to jump out to an early lead in this one. And it looked like all Hawks for a while. And what a crowd to do it in front of as well. The place was buzzing once again there on Sunday night. I was happy with the effort that the Hawks put up against the Colorado Avalanche, and I didn't expect that to be the case. Really thought that this could have been a back-to-back drubbing for the Hawks, and we could be sitting here saying a lot of bad things about it, but it would still be against the best team in the NHL, and we would probably justify it. I thought there was a lot of positives to take away from this one. You want to get wins. You want to get wins for sure. That's fine. And I agree. I like victory beers more than I like misery beers. But they played a tight game against them. I think there's still some room for improvements. And I put this one, as I would say, and I tweeted this out as well, I put this one sort of in the learning moments category of Blackhawks losses.
Okay.
A young and hungry team can learn from a game like this against the best team in the league. You look at the Charlie Roumeliotis stats that you just read out there, and you say, okay, that's pretty good for your top player to be able to go out there and shut down another team's top guy. What do you need? This was a good litmus test. The measuring stick came out, and we figured out, here's what we need to do to play against some of the best teams in the league. You're going to have to match that intensity next time and probably ramp it up a little bit in order to find a way to get victory against teams like this. That's a playoff hockey team. That's a team with Stanley Cup aspirations. There were no aspirations for this team this season. It was get better, and if you find yourself another lotto pick, that's fine. I think that is a learning moment for everybody in that locker room to figure out, how do we ascend to that level? And they showed that they can play with a team like that. And I think that it's really positive coming off of what just happened against Buffalo. It had to have felt, at least coming off the ice after that first period, they're sitting there thinking, okay, we can skate with these guys. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Now, the loss in the L column here and no points going up on the board, that hurts. But for all intents and purposes, I think it's a learning moment. This team can get better. I think Spencer Knight will learn something from this as well. And some of the younger guys will see this and say, okay, here's where we can make some changes. And hopefully, if things are going the right direction, you do learn from this. Because I think that's a very tough test for this young team that's played really well so far this season. in a stretch where they haven't played their best hockey so far. So that's kind of how I look at this loss, Ron. I don't know about you, but that's just how I feel.
I think you put it well in the sense of that the response was there. I love the response. I think there is a lot to learn from this game as well. The response, I think, is to me is the biggest takeaway in a positive note, because you could have easily trucked out there against the best team in the league 2 days after you just got embarrassed in Buffalo after a disheartening loss in your own building and given a really shitty effort, and they didn't. And that's growth. That's part of this growth that we want to see from this team. But Tony, I told you I had a 1A for some ruffle some feathers, and we're just going to get into it.
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
Tony, I'm here to ruffle the feathers of Blackhawks fandom, and here is what it is. You kind of alluded to it. I'm just going to say it in a little bit of more of spiteful, meaner way. Everybody's gotten really high about this team being hanging around the playoffs, and I think that's great. And we said it here on this show that I thought they were going to hang around a playoff picture all season long. Go check the tapes. When everybody else was saying lottery, we were saying they're gonna compete for a playoff position. They're gonna be a team that you don't want to play in January and March when the schedule gets tough. But they are still so far from being a true competitor in this league, and you saw it in that game, because especially in the third period, once Colorado got that lead, knowing damn well that they were kind of being stalemated for a large portion of the night by this young and upcoming Blackhawks team, you saw them settle in, settle down, and shut down this Blackhawks offense. The Hawks looked like they were moving at 50% speed in that entire third period compared to the Avs. And that's the difference between a team that has legitimate cup aspirations, as you noted, and a team that's in a growth stage of their rebuild. Now, granted, does this game maybe look a little different in Andre Burakovsky and Nick Foligno in the lineup? Maybe. I genuinely believe they might. If they're at true full strength, they might have a little bit more gas in the tank to come back and actually make this game a bit more interesting. But to everybody that's like, they're going to make the playoffs and they're going to do some irrational shit this season, don't get me wrong. I would love it if they made the playoffs, because I think that's valuable experience for a young team. But for them to probably have to go play this Avs team in a 7-game series, it's not going to end pretty. It's going to be a full learning lesson moment, because this roster is still a long way away from being a true contender. So I'm sorry if that ruffles some feathers for you, but it's just the truth. They got a long way to go when it comes to firing up the standings and being a true contender. And Tony, kind of a perfect segue here into the actual NHL standings as we sit right now. Blackhawks are 3 points out of a playoff spot. Now, granted, right, a win on Wednesday fixes a lot of those woes. You get 2 points. Maybe a couple of those teams ahead of you lose, and you're right back in the thick of it. This 3-game losing streak was tough, because they were hanging around in a wild card picture. Hell, entering that game on Thursday, Tony, I don't know if you recall, had they won, they would have been the 4th best team in the Western Conference based on their record, which is crazy to think about. It just shows you how quickly things can change if things go south. They are, again, 3 points out of that playoff spot, but they do have games in hand over Utah, who is currently sitting in that last wild card spot, as well as San Jose and Edmonton, who are technically above them in the standings. The only 2 teams between the 2 wild card spots and where they sit that have either equivalent games or games in hand over the Hawks are the Winnipeg Jets and the Vegas Golden Knights. So who knows, right? They got an important stretch of hockey that we'll talk about a little bit later, but that's kind of where things sit. Tony, how about some positive news? I'm tired of talking about negative shit. Andre Burakovsky skates in full on Tuesday. No non-contact jersey. He skated on his own in a non-contact on Monday, but Tuesday was spotted in a red practice jersey. It looks like he's expected to play on Wednesday against the Minnesota Wild. He was taking line rushes on Bedard's right wing again. Tony, I don't know about you. That makes me feel a lot better, because I said it to you at the United Center. I've said it to people in general conversation, and I'm going to continue to say it here. They missed Andre Burakovsky. I know people don't want to hear that, because he wasn't supposed to be the flashy sign. He was an important addition to this team over the summer, and you saw it. They missed him in this latest 3-game stretch when he got hurt against the Seattle Kraken.
He was. And before we get there, I just want to settle back in and say I enjoyed your ruffling of some feathers there.
Thank you.
I think we've sort of talked about our collective one already. We could touch back on that in a minute if you want. And I talked about mine, but I believe the Andre Burakovsky missing from the lineup right now has done a couple of different things. One, he's been one of your most productive offensive players on the first line. And so you've had to have Connor Bedard sort of shuffling around with, different cast of characters over this stretch of now 3 games that they've lost. You look at this and you say, okay, injuries happen. We're going to have to adapt. But this sort of fits the bill of what we talked about with why this team didn't perform up to what people thought they could even last season. Burakovsky's been that staple for Bedard so far this year. That is not really something that anybody can argue at this point. When he's in the lineup, this team has been winning. When he's not, check out the last 3 games.
Not great, Bob.
It happens. So I think, we have to hope and pray that he's on his way back, hopefully for tomorrow night. I know that you just mentioned, he was on the ice for practice today, and it seems to be trending in that direction. That hit, go back and watch that replay. Things could have been bad for a long time. So thank your lucky stars that he's on his way back, and hope that it's not something that can potentially be reactivated. I mean, you look at the way that his head was just leaning over and the way his neck turned, like things could have been very bad there. We all know what happened when Connor Bedard sort of went head down into an elbow. That was a significant injury that cost Bedard, over a month of time, Ron? So thankful that this seemingly is being worked out at this point. But again, crucial stretch. Talking about your ruffle some feathers here, Ron, I'm just bringing it back, reeling it in. Our guy, Steve Kwiatkowski, at Dirty Third 81, wrote in his Monday notebook yesterday that, there is sort of this logjam in the standings right now. And I want to just point this out. We've been talking about the Thanksgiving deadline, and he did a nice little paragraph blurb on this, that there's a lot of teams sort of bunched up right now in the Western Conference. And you mentioned, had they won, they could have been up there still even to this day. I think you probably only needed 2 points, maybe 3 out of those 3 games to keep yourself, I believe, in a playoff spot. And as you mentioned, a win tomorrow could potentially bump you back up. But standings are tight in both conferences. I'm just going to read off what Steve wrote. The Philadelphia Flyers hold the second wildcard spot with 25 points. 3 other Eastern Conference teams are out with 25 points. The Washington Capitals are out with 24 over in the Eastern side. The Red Wings lead the Atlantic Division with 27 points. 3 teams have 25, with the Montreal Canadiens in 5th place over there. In the West, the Utah Mammoth hold the second wildcard spot with 25, and 2 teams are out with 25. There's 2 more behind them with 24. This was Monday. So I'm not exactly sure where the standings are right now, but amongst the teams expected to be in the playoffs, the Edmonton Oilers, the Washington Capitals, the Winnipeg Jets, Montreal Canadiens, and Florida Panthers, who are all projected to be playoff teams, are not in the playoffs right now. This has been a very interesting NHL season. Now, that's not to say that the Hawks are completely buried, done, and out of it. I know, Ron, you just went off on your tangent, but the point projections that Steve included in here has the Hawks sitting in 7th place in the Central with only 78 points this year. That's the point projection. Now, we talked about, the money puck playoff chances and all of that other stuff earlier. The Hawks opened the season with about a 5%, 4% chance of making the playoffs. That was up to almost 50 last week. I haven't seen the updated money puck lines either. Things are very fluid in the NHL playoff standings and who's in, who's out. I don't think this is going to be a typical year where some teams are starting to run away after Thanksgiving. I think that bodes well for the prediction that the Hawks are going to be hanging around a playoff spot. But if regression does happen, which it can, the Hawks might continue to fall down these standings. And I said this last week, and I'll sort of reiterate it again. That's not the worst thing in the world. There weren't playoff expectations. Now, are some fans going to be very hurt by it? And is there going to be a lot of fire Kyle Davidson, Connor Bedard's a bust, what the fuck's going on, takes that you're going to see online? I don't think that erases the growth that we've seen so far from this team. I don't think that it erases the injection of life that we've seen from Jeff Blashill since he's taken over. I don't think that erases the fact that Spencer Knight looks like an elite goaltender. I don't think it erases a lot of the positives. What it does do is tell you exactly what you said. This team is still far from its finished product. Now, that's Kyle Davidson's job to go figure out what needs to be added, but it's also the development coaches and staff that need to figure out how to instill the lessons from games like the one that they just played against Colorado to get them to a point where it can be a team that's going to be ready by the Thanksgiving deadline, the soft deadline of, hey, this team's going to be a playoff team, to sit firmly above where they are right now in the seasons following this one. So I'm not saying that all hope is lost. Can they compete for a playoff spot this season? I think absolutely they can. It's possible. It's within the realm of possibility, and their hot start has put them in a position to do so. But they're far away from the best team in the National Hockey League. They're going to have to play a lot of perfect hockey, the kind of perfect hockey that you didn't see against Colorado, Ron, in order to make that happen. So I thought your ruffle some feathers was very well warranted, and tempering expectations, I think, is important. But at the same time, I also don't think that, if they do rattle off 4 or 5 losses in a row, I don't think that that's time to raise the alarm bells and say something's wrong with the Blackhawks. No, they've played so well that when that happens, that's just sort of what you would have expected coming into the season in the first place. So I don't think that there's really something wrong here. I think it's just, we talked about Andre Burakovsky. We talked about some of the scheduling. We talked about some of the officiating. Things don't go your way. The Hawks aren't the type of team at this moment where you can overcome a ton of that adversity, because if you look at it, there's still holes in this roster that need to be fixed. I know that's a long-winded way of saying it's not all there yet. So continue to enjoy the times when they do win.
100%. Quickly, just adding to your note here, Tone, the Blackhawks playoff odds chances, according to Money Puck, as of literally this very moment, 27.9% chance of making the playoffs. So has taken a little bit of
3 games, and you lose about half of your chance there.
Yeah. So
it's still better than what they were when at the onset of the season.
Oh, 100%. But again, I and it's going to be fluid. I think something that we haven't thought about, and I don't want to get too deep into this because we have a couple more things to touch on here, and this could be a whole can of worms, but there's going to be teams that potentially lose guys from the Olympic break because of injury. Like it's inevitable. We saw it last year with the Four Nations, where the Kachucks were banged up. A lot of these guys were banged up because they go full balls to the walls for their countries. The Hawks are probably going to have very minimal representation at the Olympics, just kind of by nature. That might be good for this team. So something to keep in mind as the season wears on. There's a lot of hockey still to be played, but again, 3 losses in a row when it's that jam-packed. I think that's a great illustration of how jam-packed these standings are, Don. It's certainly something that we will keep an eye on. Tony, I do want to get to our ruffles and feathers, but I do want to get to one other thing that's kind of been tickling the Blackhawks fan base the wrong way today on the internet, and that is Anton Frondell. So he has been getting, for Djurgårdens, the 13th forward treatment. For anybody that isn't sure, European hockey is very different. They can dress an extra skater every game. So you can either play 12-7 or you can play 13-6. And that's what Djurgårdens does. 13-6 is what they do. And Frondell has been kind of that 13th forward, which is interesting because considering everything, he's got 21 points for Djurgårdens right now. That is currently tied for 4th best on the team. He has played in 22 games, so he's played in every game so far this season, which is noteworthy. His 8 goals are amongst the best on the team. In fact, they're second only to Charles Hudon, who some people that are hardcore shell players may recall that. Yes, thank you, sir, for pulling that up. And again, he's also your plus minus leader by a large margin. He's a plus 12, and the next closest guy's a plus 4. But the time on ice is a little less. Tony, I beg to you, are you concerned about this? Is this something that you're worried about? Or do you have a little bit more of a tinfoil take on Anton Frondel and how he's being utilized by his SHL club in Djurgårdens? Oh, the mute mic got Tony Marchese.
Oh, it got me. Sorry, I was trying to get into the stats there. I'm not really concerned by this all too much. You look at the plus minus sitting there at plus 12. You look at the points that he's put up, 13. I think that's best for 4th on the team right now. I'm not concerned by that level of production. Sure, you want to see him as, your team's top overall pick at number 1 and just running away with the league. Guys can go through, down periods and whatnot. But I'm wondering, maybe this is a little tinfoily, but I'm wondering if maybe the Hawks want him sort of protected a little bit in terms of, his time on ice and his exposure to an injury that could knock off his development. The big talk that we had this offseason was whether or not he was going to come to the States where the Chicago Blackhawks would control his development, or if he was going to return back to Sweden. Now, knowing that he's most likely coming to America next season, or even, I think you've mentioned, Ron, you're the GM, you've got the PhD in salary cap geography, so you know how these transactions work far better than I do. So if I start speaking out of my ass on something that doesn't work, please correct me if I'm wrong. But if they're eliminated from playoff contention early on, there's a chance that you see Anton Frondel get a cup of coffee here with the Chicago Blackhawks as early as April, mid-April, sometime around there.
Maybe even March, depending on how the season plays.
So if the Blackhawks aren't expecting him to slot right in a top 6 capacity, which they may, you never know, if that's going to happen, is there something else afoot here? Could it be his, Swedish team is evaluating other players and whatnot, and the Blackhawks development isn't their primary concern? Maybe the Blackhawks themselves said, let's make sure this guy is healthy through the season, limit his minutes, and take less risk on this. You're obviously seeing a guy that is impacting the game for his team in Sweden. He's putting up points. He's doing his job. It's not as sexy as you want it to be, but I think to sound off on alarm bells right now on an 18-year-old prospect playing in this league is a little, I don't know. It seems overpressed to me. And I know that that's, a common thing to do online and to get upset. I do this with players all the time, wondering what's going on here. But I think there's still time here. And you haven't seen him even come over and try and translate his game on an American rink, Ron. So there's a lot to still go in this journey with Anton Frondel, but I'm not sitting here saying, okay, all right, bust after 2 months of hockey and 21 games played so far. I think that's a little bit aggressive for anybody who's concerned at the moment. We could check back in on this in, say, February, maybe. And if it still looks a little concerning, then that would be time to check in on it and say, what the hell is going on here? But I mean, the plus minus numbers are off the charts, way better than anybody else on his team. You just have to wonder, what the coaching decisions are behind that. And neither you nor I are over in Sweden and paying attention to that on a daily basis. So to just look at the stat sheet and where he's sitting at in the lineup and, draw conclusions from there, you're just taking shots in the dark, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think really at the end of the day, I don't have a lot of concern because the production's there despite the time on ice. I think there's a little bit more concern if he's not producing and the time on ice is low. The production's there. He's also a young player. Like that's just kind of how Sweden works. Remember, this is not his Swedish junior team. He is playing on the big time SHL team. This is the top tier team for Djurgårdens, and they're in a playoff position. Like they have things to play for. They have veterans that play on that roster that are naturally going to get more ice time because they're more acclimated to the Swedish game. And I don't think that's a shot at Frondell. I think the fact he's produced the way he has in his limited time in terms of minutes is quite impressive, truthfully. And I don't think there's a ton of concern. Again, Djurgårdens is right now fourth in that league, so they're probably going to be in the postseason. So there's a good chance we may not even see Anton Frondell this season. If we do, it might be for kind of that aforementioned true cup of coffee for 1 or 2 games in April, perhaps.
Was he up last year with the?
No, he was
That's
not.
what I thought.
Yeah, so that was the reason he wanted to go back, because he wanted to play for the top level team and he was expected to be on the top level team this season. So again, I think there's it's interesting, but again, to your point, Tony, I think you put it beautifully. None of us are. Most of the people commenting on this are not actively understanding the SHL and how it works on a day-to-day basis, and because of that, I think it's hard to truly get upset about it. I just think it's more interesting than anything else, as something to keep an eye on. But Tony, let's run this thing back, shall we? One more time.
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
We are
ruffling feathers.
Huh?
We're double ruffling some feathers.
Double ruffling some feathers today. And we're completely kind of going off the rails here, just a hair. We're going back to something that we talked about much earlier in the show. Really relates to kind of that Seattle game, and then as well a little bit in that Colorado game. And I think it's the soft bullshit officiating that we're seeing in the league. It's been bad. And this is, I think, an NHL problem. I don't think it's just a Blackhawks problem. Obviously, we're hyper fixated on the Blackhawks, so we see it the most against our favorite team. But the phantom tripping call in Sunday's game against the Avs, that they actually went back and discussed and said no penalty, which was crazy because Blashill and Bertuzzi were irate. And then you go back to the no calls and calls in that Seattle game and how they were just, and again, these officials have gotten tone. This was something I shared with you in much more passion than I'm going to share it here, but they've gotten a little soft. I remember when officials would be mic'd up. You even brought it up, the famous Tony Amante video of him being mic'd up. Players would motherfuck officials all the time, and the officials would give it back because that's a part of the game. These guys are all soft, and they think because they wear stripes that they're above the game, or that they're this elite level of I control what happens in this. It almost feels like a power struggle rather than a give and take. They're a part of the game, not above the game. And I think they're getting a little soft because they just can't take a little bit of criticism when they fuck up. Be honest, be truthful, communicate with these players. And if somebody tells you to go fuck off, tell them to fuck off right back, because that's what the officials of old would do. And the NHL ran a lot more smoothly, and the officiating wasn't a problem. I get you want to be respected, but in the heat of competition, guys are going to say shit that maybe they wouldn't say to your face in a general conversation. Get over yourself, look in the fucking mirror, grow a fucking ball sack and a backbone, and tell them to go fuck off as well. It's totally okay. In fact, I would probably respect you more, Zebras, if you had the balls to tell a player to fuck off if he told you fuck you.
Fair's fair. I mean, I don't think you're saying anything wrong here. You played sports. We both played sports. It's not it's not just this black and white. Oh, he said something to me. Off to the box you go. Watch some Shoresy for like a minute. You know, just watch some Shoresy. I know that's, you know, he's not officiating NHL games, but he's giving it back and forth with like high school kids. That's part of what makes the sport great. We're at a point right now, man, where it's just they don't want to do that. They want to send a guy to the box and get their mic time, go up there and Connor Bedard, 2 minutes for unsportsmanlike conduct, so that they can hear their own voice on the television when they go home at night. I don't know what it is, but here we are. And this is exactly, I mentioned the lip reading. It's exactly what Jeff Blashill, I'm pretty sure, called the referee after that call the other day. This goes back the whole season, though, Ron. Think about the goaltender interference for Tyler Bertuzzi poking a puck into the net.
No, that one was so bad.
It's nauseating, and it's just gotten worse as time has gone on. And officiating is going to get criticized by every fan, every single person on the internet who's got a podcast or a Twitter account or whatever platform you're on. They're going to talk about it. It's just part of the game. This is the worst I've seen it. This is the absolute worst I've seen it. There's been some calls that have gone the Hawks' way that I've sat there and said, that's a gift.
Yeah.
That's a gift. And, it goes both ways. Unfortunately for the Hawks, it seems to have bitten them in the ass a couple more times than it's helped them out so far this season. You just want to see it called close to fair, and I think that we're okay. But, I hate to even dig down the lines to this, but this is the type of stuff that gets you towards baseball discussions of robot umps and what can we take out of the hands of humans and all this. Just call it somewhat evenly, and people won't have too much of a problem. I don't want to start having these types of discussions with hockey. I think the replay system is already bad enough as it is. They don't even get it right half the time. The further we go down this, the worse it gets for everyone.
Yeah.
So just, control what you can control. And if the one thing that you can control is Connor Bedard comes over and says something to you, if it's not something that, warrants, you turn around and punching the guy in the face, it's not worth putting him in the box for,
Yeah.
That's part of the sport. I think you said it really well, Ron. That's our collective ruffle some feathers right now, because I think it's just been bad for the whole league.
It has been bad, and I agree with you. Certainly a rabbit hole that we don't have time for today, but the officiating can improve, and it's been tolerable in the past. I agree. I think it's hitting a new level of just bad. Really obvious misses, I think, is the more key. I also think back to the Jeff Blashill, the little diving motions from earlier in the season. I believe that was the home opener against the Canadiens, when he was telling the officials it was a soft call. And we continue to see it, and we're in November, and that was back in mid-October. So certainly something that we'll keep an eye on. Tone, let's get to another segment.
Time to give out some stick taps.
Tony, do you have any stick taps for us today before we sign off?
I do got one stick tap to give out, and that is at the United Center, the restaurant above the atrium, Queenie's. Went there for the first time on Sunday night, was celebrating a special birthday dinner for my mother before the Blackhawks took on the Avalanche. We got in there probably about an hour before the game. Had a full meal. I got the steak. It was delicious. Service was fantastic in there. Got us out of the restaurant, ordered drinks, food. Still made it there for puck drop after we, I think, placed our orders in there at about 5:10 for a 6 p.m. puck drop. Excellent service there. I was surprised, honestly, because you go to a professional sporting event, you're not thinking that you're going to have a great, meal beforehand or whatnot. But if you're looking for a spot before a Blackhawks game for a little more upscale of a dinner, go check out Queenie's. I thought it was awesome. Fantastic food, fantastic service. So I got to give stick taps to them. Very, very great establishment there at the UC. Ron, got anything?
I will just double down. I think the food has improved dramatically at the United Center over the last, call it 15 years or so. Huge
You've
upgrades.
been a big fan of the nachos so far this year.
You can't go wrong with a stadium nacho, man, especially with the hot peppers. That's just a classic. But a great shout out there to Queenie's as your stick tap. Tony, I was kind of struggling with this one before the show today, because obviously we put a lot of thought into these segments, and I didn't know where I wanted to give the stick taps to, right? Like the on ice play has been a little and we're coming up on a stretch here. But I'm gonna go ahead one more time. And I'm gonna we talked about this a lot on our last show, but I'm gonna stick tap to those that controlled it, and I'm going to stick tap to the NHL schedule makers, because this amount of Blackhawks hockey around the holidays not only is good for the team, especially when they're young and upcoming and trying to generate excitement in your fan base, and you get to do it in your own building a lot when people have the time and capacity and maybe are trying to do more things like attend a hockey game around the holidays. But the fact that that Buffalo trip was the only game away from the United Center after November 12th until the end of the month is pretty spectacular. And we get 3 of those coming up this week yet. One tomorrow against the Minnesota Wild, one on Friday, which we'll be in attendance for against the Nashville Predators, and then, of course, one on Sunday against the Anaheim Ducks. So big stick tacks to them, because I think having the Hawks home right now in this stretch is so important, because people can get out, see the product, get excited about this team, see the black jerseys on display this coming weekend. And I think that's just going to continue to amplify. I think we're going to see more crowds, Tony, like we saw on Sunday, where it's 20,000 plus again, packing the United Center on a night-to-night basis. And I think that's critically important for a team that's on the rise. So stick taps to the NHL schedule makers. Tony, what's on tap next? Well, we kind of just touched on it. 3 games coming up this weekend, all at home. The Blackhawks will then go on a West Coast road trip of sorts. It's 4 games, but only 3 opponents. They'll play Vegas. They'll play LA back-to-back twice, with a night off in between, kind of a weird little nuance to see a team, an opponent play back-to-back games against one another in the same building. And that's exactly what we're going to see in LA. And then, of course, the Anaheim Ducks will be a part of that swing as well. But before that, we still have those 3 home games coming up this week. Wednesday, as we mentioned, against Minnesota, that's a 7:30 Central Time puck drop. And very important to note, if you are not getting to attend the game, that's an ESPN Plus / Hulu exclusive only. You cannot catch that game on CHSN on Wednesday. Be on the lookout for that how to watch from us over at ontapsportsnet.com in case you forget. In addition, then, Friday's game is just a traditional 7 o'clock Friday night start against the Predators. That one is back on CHSN if you're not able to make it out to the UC. And Sunday's game will be the exact same thing, but that is a 6 o'clock start. One of those great 6 o'clock starts on a Sunday night, before the Blackhawks have to hit the road and go west. So that is what's on the horizon, and probably what will be in between us and another show here as we get to the holidays. Tony, in addition to what's on tap next from a Blackhawks standpoint, happy Thanksgiving to you, sir, and to all of our listeners. Again, we will be live after the holiday. Happy American Thanksgiving, I should say, to all of those that aren't American and not celebrating this Thursday. Lots of food will be consumed. Football will be watched. Hockey will be watched, especially on Black Friday. And of course, family time and time with friends as well as a part of it. So it's going to be a great time. And we certainly wish all of our listeners the same. Tony, before we completely sign this thing off, any final thoughts for us before we wish everybody a great rest of their holiday week?
Let's get some wins this weekend. Let's bring home a couple of points and put ourselves back up the standings so we have less to complain about on our next episode. But I share the same sentiment that you do. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And that's about it from here, Ron. When we close this thing down, how we always do.
I agree. Just a quick final thought from me as well, encouraging everybody to follow at 4 Feathers Pod on the socials. We hope you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button over on the OnTap Sportsnet YouTube channel. You'll know when we go live, and all of our other great shows go live here on the OnTap Sportsnet platform. And of course, ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTap Sportsnet on the socials. If you listen to us on podcast, please give us a rating. Hopefully it's 5 stars and a comment about how much you appreciate our content. And of course, Tony, 2 tough games against the Wild and Ducks, but a very winnable game on Friday against the Predators. Hopefully we're talking about 3-0 next time out. Tony, let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.